Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is the June session of the Bad Buildings webinar series. My name is Kelsey Romer, and I'm an AmeriCorps member with the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia, and I do my service with the Northern West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center and their Bad Buildings program. And the Bad Buildings program is what we're going to talk about today, specifically bad grads. It's June, so you got to do the graduation celebration. So today we're going to talk to you all about what it's like to go through the Bad Buildings program, coming from the perspective of the communities themselves that have actually already navigated it. And we've got some folks that are either already completed or that are still in the process. So you'll really get kind of the gamut of what the process is like. So before I introduce everybody, just the regular technical reminders, we're going to use the chat for questions, and please submit questions. We really want to, hear from you all. If you are curious about the program and want to know if it's right for you, these are the folks to ask. So take advantage. There's no bad questions. So submit those in the chat. I'll drop my information in there as well. If you have any technical difficulties, you can reach out to me. And otherwise, yeah, we'll hear from each of them. So we've got Shae Strait from Fairmont, and also one of the people that helped start the Bad Buildings program. So he's going to be very helpful for us today too. We've got Miss Judy Cronauer from Davis, and we've got Candice Helms from Hinton. So we've got kind of all parts of the state here with us today. Do we want to start with Shae? Do you want to start? We didn't discuss this first. Do you want to start, Shae?
I don't think my unmute button was working. Yeah, I can start. That'd be fine. So thanks for having me here. So yeah, I'm Shae Strait. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the City of Fairmont, West Virginia. And I think as some of you may already know, I'm the former program manager for WVU Bad Buildings, and used to work under the Brownfield Center and with many of the wonderful folks on the call here today. So Fairmont had started this process in 2015 and finished up in 2016. It usually takes most towns a little over a year to really finalize the whole process because it's volunteer based, right? We get our citizens involved. They go out and collect information. It takes a while for us to refine it and then to analyze it and talk about it. I have an interesting relation to Fairmont, especially because I was the program manager when writing the redevelopment plan for the city of Fairmont. I wasn't here for the surveying and volunteers. My predecessor, Luke Elser, had done that at WV Bad Buildings. But then as the first thing he did, he goes, "Hey, you're familiar with Fairmont? Here, write this report," and he handed it to me. So it was a great trial by fire in getting started, but I did get to participate in the last couple of meetings. So I was here at the start of all this for the city of Fairmont, and now in my new role, all these years later, I'm their Director of Planning Development. Although I don't do code enforcement, that's not my job. As planning and development, we track trends, information, we try to make policy recommendations and work with all the other departments across the city to try to tackle the issues and create a better place for all of our stakeholders and citizens. So I, at this point, basically just track data and information on this and make recommendations. So I don't want to get credit for all the hard work our code enforcement team does and the building inspections department. But real quick, I want to share some information with you all. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen. So this is a summary of what Fairmont's initial survey looked like. The citizens, this first box up here at the top, our citizens had identified 282 structures. Now, those aren't all like really problematic buildings. With the Bad Buildings program, each town can decide how they want to look at the problem and in the scope of it. So our citizens here in Fairmont decided they wanted to look at vacant buildings or buildings that were kind of in a gray area. Maybe they could become a big problem, maybe they wouldn't. So we have a lot of things that were rated good and fair under the Bad Buildings model that we were tracking. But to get away from that and to what the discussion is here today, the problematic properties, the really bad ones we want to work on, we had 125 that were rated either poor or should be demolished. So 82 were poor, 43 were should be demolished, and we can see those numbers right there. So nearly 45% of the total inventory. At this point in time, this was the largest bad buildings inventory in the state. Charleston West Side knocked this out of the water just a couple of years later with all their hard work. But up at this point in time, 2016, this was the largest survey that had been done. So Fairmont wrote their redevelopment plan in collaboration with WV Bad Buildings and began implementing that. And a lot of that focused on like getting gateway roads addressed, clustered areas, long-term vacant properties addressed, and so forth. So this went through a lot of folks' hands and responsibilities over the years, and the city did a really good job of not dropping the ball on it, even with all the changes and the code enforcement staff and other city officials working on this issue. And so where we're at currently, I just want to talk about the numbers real quick. We're looking at this at poor and should be demolished buildings. The city has eliminated 2/3 of all of the buildings that the citizens had identified, which is, given it's only been 5 years, 2017 till now, it's very good work. You know, the problem didn't start overnight. We're not going to be able to address it overnight either. And Fairmont's in a unique position because although we're a city in the state of West Virginia, we're a lot like the other smaller municipalities, right? We don't get entitlement dollars. We're not an entitlement community. We don't get CDBG dollars. So all this has mostly been addressed with either really good code enforcement practices or general fund money, just directly putting money from our general fund into solving this problem. And then hard work trying to create relationships and encourage people to take responsibility for their properties. But yeah, nearly 2/3 have been eliminated. And then from that, the majority of the ones that remain are in some active level of remediation or enforcement as well. So we're really excited about that because it could be in the next year or two that everything our citizens had originally identified have been addressed. We have that opportunity potentially. So very exciting for Fairmont, a lot of hard work into that. We've also seen, this isn't always about demolition. We've seen some rehabs and some buildings saved as well. And then we've also, I think everyone else on this call will agree with this. This is a living thing. We don't just survey once and then it's done and over with. There are new fires, there are new floods, there are new airship issues and abandonments and all kinds of things happening in our communities all the time that we have to kind of stay aware of. And so we've also had to address, us and our citizens, an additional 300 buildings have been torn down outside of this inventory, whether for economic development purposes or because something happened like a fire. So there's been a lot of other work too. Now, those aren't things the city funded. I want to be clear about that. We funded 61 of the demolition, or 63 of the demolitions so far. So I want to show that real quick of what this looks like. With WVU Bad Buildings help, this was mapped out at the onset. And then now today, the city's tracking this using ArcGIS software to see where this is happening and what that looks like. So this is a map of all the demolitions the city has funded, both before and after. So this is a neat moment to talk about the power of data and community engagement and participation. Because if we're looking over here at this map on the right-hand side, we have the years 2012, 2013, 14, and 15. There is no 16 demolitions. And you can see it was all in the single digits, what the city was doing with its own money. And then once the city had gone into the bad buildings program and adopted this model and got really serious about it, the city council decided to allocate a substantial amount of general fund money to address this problem. And it also made sure they were supporting the code enforcement officials well. And so we can see after 2016 on that legend there on the right, we start going up into the tens of buildings were being demolished every year, right? So 13, 15, 11. 2020 was a bit of a wash, the pandemic. I think we can all agree on that. So we get them all again, I feel like. And then 2021, just so far, we're only 6 months in, we've taken down 30 structures and we have several more already planned. You can see too from the map, there's been a concentration of this. We really focused on key areas like commercial gateways, for anybody familiar with the town of Fairmont, Pennsylvania Avenue, which is the road that goes from downtown to our community of Bellevue, looks much different today than what it did 10 years ago. And that's because of that hard work and prioritizing what the citizens thought was most important for us. As well, we've made big impacts on our residential neighborhoods and other gateway areas too. But we're not just still tracking our accomplishments, we're tracking what's still to come. And oh, yep, there we go. So switching to this, these are our current raise and repair orders. And so these are properties that the code enforcement officials have taken direct action on and have sent letters to property owners to let them know that their property is in violation of our building code and they either need to be fixed or torn down. And so this is where we're at that negotiating table with them to try to encourage them to take responsibility and ownership. So we still have over 100 of those that we're actively working on. We're making good progress on it. And we've also continued to make sure that we're prioritizing the goals that our citizens had originally and city council has maintained as well. So this is a heat map showing where our highest concentration of raise and repair orders are located in the city. And we can clearly see there are 2 hot spots. Those numbers you see on the screen, that's our rating system. We just adopted a new rating system for these buildings to make sure that we're being as objective and as fair as possible in this process. So this way we're not just necessarily tearing down a building just because someone's yelling louder, but we're making sure we're being targeted and following our own best practices on what we need to address in the city. So it's very exciting. And this is then a zoomed in map of those hot spots showing that concentration of raise and repair structures. Mostly this is in and around downtown. And historically, that's where most of the issues have been since that initial survey. So that's just a brief history and then where we're at currently in Fairmont. And so I'd like to maybe step back for a moment and then let my peers here talk about their communities as well and what the process might have looked like for them.
Yeah, that is excellent. That's so exciting. 2/3 of your demolition completed is just astronomical. Well done. I know, I was looking for my emoji. I didn't get to it in time. I was gonna do the little celebration hat.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Yeah, so anyone who has questions about any of that process or anything like that, like I said, go ahead and drop your questions for Shae in the chat. In the meantime, Judy, do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about Davis and what your role was there in that community and how that kind of went through?
Sure. It's a lot different from what Shae's talking about. There's only 660 people in Davis, West Virginia. So I'm even less than you, Candice. We're a very small town, and our entire bad buildings group is just volunteers. We have no town staff working with us at all. So, and we have a fairly small list. It's like 37 was on our list. But I do want to say that the list was very helpful in maintaining objectivity, because you're concerned with these individuals and relationships that you don't want to be biased about, like you're picking on someone. And as long as you keep the objectivity in it, you can move forward with these difficult conversations, like why your house is on this list. These are the reasons that it's rated the way it was. So that list was very helpful for us. When Shae was talking about demolition, that can be really expensive for a small town. The only extra money we really have is a 1% hotel motel tax, which doesn't allow us to do a lot of demolition. And I'll talk about that later when we talk to some of the lows of our experience with this. But we've gotten, I'd say, 15% of our bad buildings addressed. And the amazing thing is, really, once the rumor mill starts in a small town, they realize you're making this list, a lot of people just clean up. their property, because they realized it was a mess, and they said, okay, I got to get out there and mow and remove the debris. So you can get a lot done just by the knowledge that people are actively looking at these properties. So that helped a lot. And we do not have any GIS or tracking or GIS, none of that. It was just pieces of paper and surveys and photos that we take. So, and we started this probably, I don't know, Shae, I think 5 years ago. I wasn't in the group at the time, and I'm an outsider. Unless your grandmother's buried in the cemetery, that's when you're an insider in this town. So I'm an outsider, but a lot of people on the Bad Buildings group are connected, and they're locals. And they did a lot of talking that really helped move people to make changes. That was very helpful from a small town perspective. And it's an ongoing process for us right now too. We really haven't met or done anything in over a year now. So we really have to update our lists.
That's really good to know, though. That's part of why we especially wanted to hear from all of your communities, because it gives a good spectrum of big town, small town, different approaches, who's acting, you know, in the program, that kind of thing. So it does just go to show you too that you can do this program no matter what your situation is. You know,
Right.
as long as you have people that are invested and want to do the work, then you can make it happen. So that's great to hear about. Okay, so then Candice, go ahead and tell us about Hinton.
Hi, y'all. I'm Candice. I serve with Kelsey. I'm the AmeriCorps with Preservation Alliance. This is my third term. I'm with the Hinton Historic Landmarks Commission, but I am situated here at City Hall, and so I do a lot of work within the city. Before my AmeriCorps, I was volunteering a whole bunch, and Hinton was a West Virginia community development hubcap community. And so that was an 18-month-long process, and the relationships we built with them, and the relationship they had with Brownfields was kind of a natural first step to, you know, produce something of our own. And I kind of think that's where the relationship started with the Bad Buildings program. And it was great. I had just become an AmeriCorps member, so it was easy for me to, you know, dedicate some time to it, to facilitate the meetings, to organize all the information that we got. We did have a wonderful community organization that they do they work in lots of different capacities, and they really spearheaded the surveying of the properties. And so the process, it was very nice, it was very structured, and we followed it, I think, fairly well. We started in November 2019, and Nicole was our coach, Nicole Diaz. I believe it was around November 2019. And so we knew that the time wasn't on our side, and you know, you have to be realistic when approaching community projects. You know, what's going to halt things wintertime. So we were able to get a lot done before then, and I think that really worked in our advantage because we had no clue what was coming around the corner, which was the pandemic. And so we were able to get a lot done to help set us up for success. We had inventoried. We stayed with the downtown area. We have a pretty expansive historic district, and so we went outside of the district, but we did identify 66 properties, and these are things that I will tell you that did not work. I had put the names of the owners on. I had just a sheet that I handed out, and you know, after everyone did the surveys, I put the address and the owner's names on that. That did not work very well. And in hindsight, yeah, of course it wouldn't work well, because as Judy was saying, like we want to maintain that objectivity so people don't feel like they're being called out or being called, slum homeowners. That's not the point here. And that's not what we're trying to do, is we're trying to empower the people. So I learned from that one. So maybe that's something you could take on with you. So we did all the categories. We did, demolish, to be demolished, good, fair, poor. And I created an unknown and an owner remedy, because there was an owner that came, and she's pretty heated. She up to my mediation skills and facilitating meetings, which is, I'm thankful for that. But she said, I will take care of it, take my name off the list. And I said, yes, ma'am, absolutely. Would you like to help in any other way? So I learned a lot in this process. It was great. But so out of the 66 properties, we had 23 to be demolished, and we have demolished 13 of those. So that's 56% in a pretty short amount of time. This was a great, well-placed program. And like any program, if you follow it, you stick with it, it really does help you on your, you sometimes you don't know what that finished product will be. And like Shae said, this is a live being, like it just keeps morphing and changing. But since this little list that I put out there, this has been sent, we have a new city attorney, and it came really helpful, because we had this influx of energy to be able to tear down these buildings. And it's like we had to do it right now. We were ready. And I think that's the point of it, is sometimes the timing isn't right, but we were prepared. So when the time was right, then we were able to strike while the iron was hot. So through all that, we still have some on. The program took a halt because of COVID. However, I feel like we could still be considered graduates. And it is going to be ongoing. And, I feel very, like honored to even be talking. Like I'm listening to Shae, and I'm like, okay, like I can do this. I can create this spreadsheet, like do the percentages, because I think those numbers are very, very, very important. When you see 56% of something, like you feel accomplished. And, in this whole, with the smaller community, and people are so used to it being a certain way. I am an outsider as well. I was born and bred in Texas, and I just see things differently here. I don't have that, this place is old and tired, and it's just easy to become complacent. And I feel like programs like this, it kind of, you do see people going around, people are talking about it, everyone's talking about this list, I heard it in so many different ways. Like people come up to me that, who's on this list, and da, 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 da. And and I think the city did a really great job. I don't know how intentional it was, but we did do citywide cleanups, and so that just like kind of piggybacked on this, and it was just like this full momentum of just cleaning it up however we can. And it was so great. It was well placed. We're very fortunate, and I am taking notes. I am going to do things, and I need to update the list, and I do want to share those numbers. Like I love that Shae had that template, because I really think that is important. I think that really is, there's strength in numbers, and I think that's something across the board, and it shows the community like, yeah, we are doing something. It's great. And we do have a couple of projects on deck where we've been looking to get certain, there's so many hoops to go through, because a lot of these properties have, they went to taxes and getting a hold of the owners, finding the owners. It's some of these particular lots are very, very hard, and then they need to come down, but you just can't tear them down. And then comes the other hurdle of funding. So, you know, it is nice to get organized, so when the time does come, you're ready to do it. Some that organization that helped us from the get-go, they have since started a little offshoot of their organization, and they were just involved in the Fulcrum project, and they're utilizing these, you know, newly emptied spaces to put a playground, a community playground. And so that's, you know, that kind of that last step of the process, the redevelopment. And a playground in a community that's this small is so beneficial to the kids. And so it's just empowering from all different ages, levels. And I really feel that because we were organized, and just a list, it really, really helped just kind of speed us up into where we are today. And, you know, there's a house being demolished as we speak. So it's an ongoing process, and I'm very thankful. And I know I can speak on behalf of this, because we did, fortunately, my supervisor is the city manager. So we had a lot of city, and then the mayor at the time, he was also on board, and he attended the meetings. And so it's nice to have the city representatives and to work with them. And it was a really good, positive program to go through. So we were very happy.
You can't get a better review than that. We're going to put that on the website. No, that's very exciting though. And same thing, like that, having that much success, even without a pandemic in the middle, is great. So the fact that it managed to, you know, get done with that wrench thrown in, you should all be very, very proud of yourselves. Each of your communities all should be very proud of yourselves. And we're so glad that you did the program. So we've heard from all three of our guests. At this point, we're going to kind of transition to the Q&A part of things. So again, go ahead and throw any questions there in the chat. I've got some already here that I'll start with. The first one, just kind of going off of what we've been saying this whole time, we've been discussing about how the process doesn't really end. It's ongoing. So just to clarify, partially for myself, because I also am relatively new to this. So what is that kind of like last step that takes you from ongoing to completed? Like, what is that kind of last step? And maybe Nicole can help with that one. And then what does your work look like after you've completed the program? Like, what's that ongoing work kind of look like in your communities? I don't know who wants to start. Feel free, anyone with maybe Nicole, if you wanna help with that last step question, and then we'll shoot
Sure. Sure, yeah. So the end of the process is whenever the community receives what we have called in the past redevelopment plan. We're trying to come up with a new name for that, but we give that to the community, and then once it is in their hands, they are pretty much like officially graduated. And then from then on, it is the community's responsibility to follow through with suggestions and recommendations that were given to them in the plan. And then we like to try to check in with our communities every 6 months to 12 months, just to see if they have done anything new, updated their inventory, had any more questions, anything like that.
Okay, yeah, that's very helpful. Shae, I see you're unmuted. So if you want to go ahead and say what it's like in your community now with the ongoing process.
Yeah, thanks. So I think it's really interesting, especially coming from one of the communities where we've had the opportunity to be able to take so much action on the issue. And so ongoing, it's definitely taking the time, and I know we're all very busy, especially at the municipal and county levels, but just taking the time to make sure you're tracking the information, that you are watching this constantly. What new properties have come up? What ones have been removed? Where they're at in the process? Especially like our code enforcement officials, they're very good about tracking like every date of contact and action taken and so forth on every property. They're phenomenal about it. And that's what you got to do ongoing. You got to keep track of all this information. Davis was really good about that. You know, Judy and the whole volunteer team, like, were keeping track of a lot of information like that on these little property one pagers that they had for their community. I remember. And then you get to a point where hopefully, that's always the dream, right? That we start to nearly eliminate, or you do eliminate your inventory at a point. I don't know if any community ever is rid of bad buildings. You can even go to some of the most successful communities in the country. You're still going to find a dilapidated building here or there, right? So I think it's always thinking about it like that living process, always going, okay, so you need to, maybe you don't have this complex prioritization chart anymore, but instead we need to retool our approach in order to continue to handle this so it never gets to where it was again. So we never have to be at this point where we have to do these mass surveys and we have to, you know, start all over from scratch, but still just reconfigure it to continue addressing the issue and continue moving your community towards success. And I think that's very important. And I just want to do a shout out real quick. I confirmed it with Judy in chat that Davis's most notorious bad building was removed this year. So they had a huge victory there in town.
Can we say the name of that? Because I think I know what it is. I don't know if that's too gossipy or not.
I think it's okay. It's I think it was published in the newspaper and everything, but the Highlander.
Yay! Right? I drove through the week that it happened and I was like, whoa.
Yeah. So for folks who weren't familiar, it was a large hotel there at the end of town, right next to their park and their grocery store and their other historic buildings. So Davis was fortunate enough to see that problematic property removed. So yeah, just wanted to, we always celebrate the successes, no matter what scale.
I was going to say, Judy, was there a big celebration in Davis when that happened? Was everyone partying in the streets?
There was a lot of texting and picture taking, but it was COVID-y, so there was no real contact other than that.
It's okay. You got to celebrate how you can. You gotta take those wins. It was definitely noticeable when you know, because it sits right when you first come into town. It's primary. So to have it opened up was incredible.
Yeah, it was the top of our list.
Yeah. So as far as, you know, Davis and Hinton, is it the same kind of similar story for your like ongoing process after the completion? It's just more turning to kind of maintenance and keeping things from sliding, you know, backwards again, kind of the same story?
We still have a lot to work on, and it's kind of circular in many ways. I think that bad buildings take away from your economic viability, such as the Highlander Hotel. So now that that's gone, economically, if something nice goes in there, it sort of promotes the properties around it to improve as well. So hopefully the more you take down or get rid of or rehab, the land becomes more valuable and people take action on their own property of their own volition. But it'll continue going on and on. I can see that. It's something we'll have to revisit and redo our lists and check our properties.
Right. I mean, by default, it just kind of has to happen that way, right? Because time goes on. So the building that currently is fine, you know, in 5 years, that building has aged 5 years. That's just the nature of structures. So I can see what you mean with it being a circular, kind of thing for sure. Yeah.
Correct.
Candice, anything to add to that one, or do we want to move on to another question?
No, I really do. Does it ever end is very important. And when a building isn't lived in, and it definitely deteriorates quickly. And so it's, to be proactive and to get those, to have that foresight, if it's a poor or even just good or fair, it's like, make sure that these things are identified, roofs, things to stabilize the structure so it doesn't keep going that direction, to help maybe get to that ending process. And I think foresight would be huge to achieve that ending. So, yep, looking forward.
So I see there's a couple of things in the chat now. So one, Katie has mentioned, she's also in AmeriCorps with us, so we're everywhere. She says she's lived in Morgantown, Fairmont for about 10 years and I've noticed some of the demolitions. It's cool to know the process behind it. So yes, and if that also helps motivate you, people notice. Demolition it's something that people see happening and it's tangible and people get excited about it. So if you are in that situation where your town has a lot of buildings to come down and you don't know how to make it happen, bad buildings is one step in that process to kind of start making that happen, and your community will notice. So definitely good to hear that. Thank you, Katie. And we've got another question from Mark, which dovetails with another question that I was going to ask. So I'm going to go with this one. He says, within each of your cities, how and when are you consulting with environmental professionals to address some of the environmentally associated challenges with bad buildings? And how that kind of goes with another thing I was going to ask was, who are those primary actors in the bad buildings program? Like, are they government officials, like city officials? Are they volunteers, just concerned community members? Are they downtown business owners? So, them, environmental firms and things like that. Kind of who are the people in play in this process in your communities? And then I guess also, for the environmental side, when do those actors come into play? When do you need to start engaging them?
I can go first if you want, Kelsey. For Fairmont, talking about environmental consultants, it'll depend on the context of the property. Usually the only time environmental consultants don't get engaged is either in a rehab project, if it's a minor rehab, like a home and somebody's fixing it up, or if it's an imminent danger property, in which we have to demolish it because it's unsafe. It's immediate danger to everyone around it, right? And we got to get in there and move it immediately. And in those circumstances, you got to declare everything hazardous material, because it's not even safe for a consultant to go in to test it. So those are the two times normally an environmental consultant doesn't get engaged. But on like larger commercial redevelopment projects, brownfields especially, we'll want to do AAIs, phase ones and phase twos, and check for contamination on those before redeveloping the property. Most of the time to remove things like asbestos and lead and so forth. But as well, we have to do it for each demo. It's required. We have to go in and test for asbestos and other types of contaminants in the property, so we know which materials go to which landfill in case we do have to take it to different areas, or where it goes within that certain landfill. So that is regulated. And so we do hire folks to help us with that, to make sure that our contractors and everyone else involved is safe and handled. And outside of the environmental side, everyone's a player at the table. It's the way I look at it. I think it's the way the other city staff looks at it. Main Street, our Chamber of Commerce, the county itself, right? Our success is their success. This is something, we always need to be aware of, is usually a lot of the economic dollars and property tax dollars come out of towns and cities. So it's in the county's best interest to support them as well. And anyone else you could think of, like if they're a stakeholder in our community, we're bringing them to the table to work on this and to help address the property. So every little redevelopment company or housing agencies, I mean, really the list goes on and on. So everybody's involved and everybody's working on it together to help make it happen.
Yeah, that's really good to know. Judy, it sounded like in Davis, a lot of the, boots on the ground, really, really hands in were the community members. Was that the majority of your folks?
It was the majority of our folks. However, we adopted the state bad building ordinance, the 81216. And in there, it specifies that the enforcement agency, that you have a professional engineer. You also deal with the state fire marshal. And basically, they're called in when we're taking action on an unsafe structure, saying that the structure is unsafe, it needs to come down or be rehabbed. So this team would go in and evaluate it for us. And for the town of Davis, we have a professional engineering firm under contract. And so they would come and evaluate it from their perspective as to its structural standing and its whether it has asbestos. And also the fire marshal would check it for fire safety as well. And all of that information would be part of what you notify the property owner of whether it's an unsafe structure or not.
Okay. I'm not gonna skip you, Candice. I'm gonna start with you on the next question. So we're gonna, so only because we're getting closer to 2 o'clock and I've got a few more on my list. So highs and lows. Again, we want to speak candidly today. We want to tell you, the real story here about what's good and what's bad and, trying to help you with good, solid tips getting through this process. So speaking realistically, what were the highs and lows in your process? What was something that was maybe your biggest success? And then also what was something that your community just really, really, really struggled with, or some kind of obstacle that you all just couldn't find a solution to? That kind of thing.
Well, I just feel when you're bringing in the community, I feel like that can just be a very tricky situation to go through. And so you just have to be very mindful that you're poking into someone's personal life. And I think a lot of empathy and just understanding that they can be on the defense. The meetings could have turned sour really, really quickly. However, I've mediated lots of certain situations and I understand, but I think that was probably, we had a really, really good experience. We had a really wonderful, that organization came in and they meet with a purpose. We were very fortunate to have them come in like they did. But I think everything that I've mentioned before, I think I've mentioned all the highs and lows prior. Sometimes those buildings that haven't come down, there's a reason why, and sometimes it could be just as easy as not being able to contact the owner. And so it's where someone, there's houses that went down and there's one standing right in the middle of it, and he will never, ever, ever give anybody will not give anybody permission to tear it down. And I don't blame him. It's in the historic district. He's a historian. And it was the one that was the better shape of the whole entire row. So, it's just, you're dealing with the public, and it can dip really quickly if you don't be mindful of the sensitivity of the situation. But it was nice. It was, it just seemed like how, had we not had this list, we wouldn't have been able to succeed the way that we did. So it was like, everything is just right on time. And I think anybody loves that feeling of things are just happening the way that it is. You know, the plan is coming together. And so I think that that momentum helps in so many different ways in any community, especially a small one, you know. So it was just, we really, once again, just appreciated being part of this program. And we're still, you know, like we're still learning as we go. Funding is the hardest part. And I think we all know that. Finding the funding and implementing that, you know, where, you know, I know that some cities are, you know, home rule. I know that some people use that 1% sales tax to help, you know, fund the demolition of, you know, help the blight. But we haven't adopted that yet. So we're still just kind of, once we get some funding, then we go do this and we're ready. So that's just, I think that's the main part, but funding has been really hard for us. And I feel that, you know, we're all in this together, all of our communities, you know, we all lack capacity, we all lack funding. And so I think it's finally catching the ears of certain people, and hopefully, you know, there will be more funding towards these initiatives in the future to help, you know, just kind of refresh everything.
Yeah, I was expecting funding to be probably answer number one for everyone across the board. Funding is always tough, especially for demolition. We've talked about that previously. So, yeah, Judy, any particular hurdles for you all in Davis?
Yeah, I just wanted to continue with what Candice is saying. In a small town like ours, we were lucky to get the Highlander down. The new owner of it was willing to take it down before he knows what he wants to put up. So, but we were pushing very hard to get that to come down. And with that bad buildings ordinance, you can put a lien on the property, a municipal lien on the property, to get compensation for your costs of demolition. And we ran into a wall there because at tax sales, and every real estate attorney knows this, and he would have advised the owner to stop paying taxes. If it goes to tax sale, those municipal liens are null and void. It's a big loophole that needs to be closed at the legislature level, because a town our size, and probably Candice runs into this too, is we can't afford to eat that cost. That's like $80,000 to us. That's a lot of money. We could take down a residential and eat those costs if necessary. But without those tax or the municipal liens standing, it would have been too costly.
That's really interesting. I hadn't heard of that ordinance before myself, so that's really good to know about. Thank you. Shae?
Yeah, we definitely had some lows in Fairmont, despite all of our success. One of the things that happened between egos, personalities, and not believing in the city to be held accountable and to follow through, our citizen engagement part imploded and fell apart right after all the surveying was completed. And it's even a point of contention to bring it up again, to say the bad buildings program, and everyone's like, ooh. And that happens sometimes. I mean, and the reason that happens is because this is important to all of us. And that's why people take it so personally, and they have very strong opinions about it. So, like, no hard feelings there from me, at least, about it. But yeah, that happened. So that was very unfortunate. So we've not had the community volunteerism that we've had on it since then. But the city at least did fulfill its responsibility and moving forward with this, which is funny because I think oftentimes you see the opposite. Normally the governing body maybe struggles and they're the ones that kind of putter with it, and the citizens keep yelling about it. But we had a real mixed bag with it here. And then, some of the lows as well are the continuance of like new issues popping up for us. We've made leaps and strides, but you saw there were still about 100 buildings that are on a raise and repair list, even beyond the 125 originally identified. About 80 of those weren't on the list at all. So, right, that can sometimes get you down, but it's like we're still making progress. We're still getting the majority of those structures handled. And so just be positive, be aware of what's going on, and know that there is opportunity to continue to work to address the issue. So definitely some lows. And then I think one of the other complex things that can kind of get you down sometimes is you're making leaps and strides, mostly on housing. It's much easier for every community of every size to tear down housing. You know, it's about some communities can do it as cheap as $5,000, but it's usually about an average of 10,000 or so sometimes. And if it's an imminent danger or immediate tear down, 20 to 30,000 even. I mean, it gets expensive. Commercial buildings astronomically higher. So you try to redevelop the commercial buildings as much as possible. And with Fairmont, that's a good case because that's one of our lows is we have these very big historic buildings, 5, 7 stories, huge footprints, you know, and we're still working to develop those. We're feeling very optimistic about it though. We're running out of vacant storefronts and things like that. So that feels real good, right? We're seeing the growth, we're seeing the opportunity. And so that's a hard thing, right? We're 5 years in and we still don't have a couple of the largest vacant buildings. We've had a couple major successes, but still not on our highest priority ones. So we are still working on that. But I believe that us and our community will be successful.
That's the key. That's that optimism. You're going to have hurdles, you're going to have struggles, but you just have to stay positive through it and keep working at it. That's the key. So I've got another couple things here in the chat. We're really close to the end of the hour, so I'm going to read these and then I've got one last final question. We got one from Diana DeLuca, another AmeriCorps member. Like I said, we're everywhere. She is with Pro on Track in Parsons. So she says, Pro on Track took ownership of one of the bad buildings here in Parsons more than 7 years ago with a lot of hard work and grants we've provided. Just this year, 2 families with a home, which is excellent. There are 2 second-story apartments, as well as 2 new storefronts on First Street with 2 brand new businesses. And now they're moving on to the next project. So that's great. That's excellent. Good job, Diana. And then we've got Luke Peters from Ripley and Sistersville. He's just teasing us and says he's got good news and a question plus some updates. So we, if we can get that in, let's hear about that, Luke.
Yeah, I was trying to wedge myself in before the end of the hour, but so I'm with the regional council. We've got 8 counties, so all of them have dilapidated and vacant building issues, and I try to help, but kind of like you guys, I feel like I don't have total ownership, you know, so I'm there to help advise, and then sometimes I have to be gone for a while and trust them to keep things moving ahead. And so really appreciate the help of the Bad Buildings Program, Brownfields folks. But the good news, and I will give some credit to all the Brownfields and Bad Building alumni and staff, in that the development office decided to use CDBG funds statewide for demolition. Finally, you know, it's always been an eligible expense under HUD for removal of slum and blight. And while Grantsville and Calhoun County has not really been a bad buildings community, they did have that one major dangerous eyesore old hotel. It was called the Rainbow Hotel. It's 3+ stories. It stands like 4 to 5 feet away from occupied houses, and it's, you know, and it's crumbling and the roof has fallen to the road. We applied to CDBG this year, and first try got funded $200,000 for demolition. And I really hope it doesn't cost that much, but it's one of those which I think, like Shae had alluded to, too dangerous to go in and test for asbestos and lead. So we really build in a lot of extra cost just in case part of what they contest, maybe from roof shingles and things that have fallen off, comes back hot. But the town council has been seeking funds to try and get rid of that building for probably 25 years. And, finally was really encouraging to see the state see that need. And if anybody would like some guidance, I guess, on that application process, I think there'll be another chance to apply for the demolition funds probably in September or October. Be happy to help. Or you can reach out, all of you have regional councils too that might be able to help. I think the state did maybe 8 or 9 of these demolition grants this cycle that the governor announced like 2-3 weeks ago. So that is an opportunity. Sistersville is a bad buildings community, and we had intended to maybe try to apply to do like 6 or 7 demolitions there off of their bad buildings list. But because of like title issues and just kind of where things stand right now, we didn't quite make the deadline, but we might do them in a future cycle. Sistersville passed a nuisance property ordinance this year, and I think where they stand with their bad building committee, I'd like to kind of have a reset update meeting, try to get Nicole or somebody to come down and talk again about like where they are now, what their attorney has been doing with the title work, and with the new ordinance, how the city can make sure that's, I guess, being applied to these properties, because you have to have established that kind of like legal precedent before you can get HUD to pay for the demolition. And a lot of your communities, I'm sure, are not, they say they're not interested in being in the real estate business, so they don't want to own these lots. But I guess that's a good thing about the HUD money is you don't have to take control of the property. You just have to have the right of entry for demolition, and then you leave. Actually, the development office will have a demolition cost lien on that if it's ever sold. So sometimes it helps with the property owner knowing they don't have to give up their property. It just does restrict, I guess, their ultimate profit from it. So that was kind of my good news. And I know, Judy, you said like your town doesn't have access or hasn't used GIS mapping and things like that, but all the regional councils in the state also have had the opportunity to access a low-cost contract through Esri GIS. And so on a regional basis, we've been able to help a lot of communities set up some basic mapping, and we have used that in Ripley and Ravenswood and Sistersville to do digital mapping and integrate the bad building scoring onto maps and databases there. So just a quick update on some good things that are happening, and appreciate working with you all and hearing about your success stories.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And it's really funny that you mentioned the GIS thing, because we were having that literal exact conversation before we went live about how GIS can be very expensive if only there was a way for like regionally, for people to access it. So that's very good information that you just shared. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, we're a couple of years in on that, so I think some of that special pricing might expire in the next year or so. But if you want to take advantage, even on like a real small, like low dollar investment, towns can at least get started and do something like just the bad building mapping, or set up a pothole and street light form on their website so that it feeds into a map and stuff, so that you can do maintenance that way.
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we are right down to the wire now. So we're going to do one last question, lightning round, before we wrap up. Was there anything that you wish you had known when you started this that you know now? Was there anything you wish someone had just told you when you started? I like that face, Shae.
Yeah, I wish I'd have known it'd come full circle and I'd be someone in charge of this now.
If
I didn't
only.
expect that, consulting and advising to so many communities, that I'd be in the position that I'm in now. But, it's actually, I just want to say it's towns like Davis that inspired me to move into the career field I am now, seeing the need for people to have staff, to be willing to take risks and take action to help communities. So I didn't know that when I first met Judy and her whole volunteer crew, but that's really what happened, and that's why I'm here. And That's all.
Excellent. Judy or Candice? If not, then I think, oh, there you go, Judy.
Thank you, Shae. You were instrumental to Davis. And the only thing that I regret is that I didn't realize the legal obstacle of the tax sale. And it's really something that organizations should push to be changed by the legislatures.
If only there was something like an abandoned properties coalition that could put that in their policy platform or something of that nature.
The Municipal League had it as a priority, but they didn't follow through with it this year. So
yes, I know those things. I know they're far above my pay grade. I don't envy the people who have to think about the policy and how to tackle it. I know that's a complicated thing, but it definitely does sound like something that should get worked on. That's a good note. Thank you, Judy. Candice?
I don't have really anything to add because I'm so green and growing in the whole processes of things that, if there is a hurdle, the knowledge that I learned from it is very influential in how I see things in the future. So I can't really say that I have any regrets or wish I knew this because it is, we're so new to it all that, though I'm a terrible optimist. So it's a character flaw. No, it's just like I can't say it enough how much of a great program, and it was one of my first programs to help facilitate. So I learned so much with the whole process, and just being organized was very important. And I was just in a position to be very organized for the first time, like entering a project. And that could be something that I think that I would have had a regret with, that I just kind of gathered all this stuff and never really organized it. I'm just thankful that I was in the capacity to immediately organize all the data, all the surveys, because it didn't become a problem. But I could see how it would easily get, because it is it's mainly volunteer based, and so people are doing it on their extra time. I just happen to be doing it where I'm getting compensated for my time, so it's a lot different. And so if I were just volunteering my time, maybe I wouldn't take that extra hour, a week or whatever it was to do that. So organization, it really does help things a bunch.
Yeah, most definitely. Shae, I see your mic off. Are you
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to say one last thing, and that's Judy brought up a great point, and you brought up a great point, Kelsey, about there is a policy advocacy group, the Abandoned Properties Coalition, that works on some of these issues, like the tax sale program, to try to shorten that window down in a fair and just manner, and also working on trying to make demolition funding available or other types of policy solutions to help communities of every size and scale across the state of West Virginia, whether you're a small town like Davis or you're a county or maybe a larger city. We're trying to make sure that we're working on policy for that. So if you're interested, you can always reach out and give your support or input to that organization.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you all again so very much for participating today. I really, really appreciate it. And I know that everyone else in the audience and people that will view this in the future will appreciate all of your input as well, because this has been really helpful to hear and learn from. So thank you again. Thank you to everyone for attending, and join us next month. Our session is going to be called How Can You Love Your Block?, which is based on the Love Your Block program, specifically based in Huntington. We've got two of my other fellow AmeriCorps members, Kaylin and Katie, that are gonna tell us about, they're the coordinators there for that program. So they're gonna tell us about it and how your community can also do similar things as well. So thank you again. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you all.